Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the SAA's Facebook page. My name is Ali Board and I am bringing Technique Tuesday Takeover. Let me tell you more about everything that's going to happen this morning. The SAA have very kindly agreed to support me through my next big event, which is Dorset Art Weeks. And I've been broadcasting for a week already on various platforms, on my social media, over on the SAA's website, on the community page, all of those sorts of things, to share with you what it's like to start an event like this, what it takes to put an event on like this, in the hope that it will be useful to you, that some of the information that I impart might help you if you decide to do a similar event. Now, what's Technique Tuesday? Technique Tuesday is something that I've been doing for about 2 years now. It started off as a way of me pre-recording little video snippets, putting them out on my social media, just as a sort of diary of the things that I was thinking about. But since March last year, when we were in lockdown, I have been broadcasting live here from the studio, and it's been a whole series of things. It's been projects, it's been materials, it's been me sitting with a cup of coffee and just having a chat with all of you. Now, if you are watching this live, you may already know, particularly if you're a Technique Tuesday follower, you may already know that there is the facility to chat to me live. We're going out on Facebook at the moment, so please do pop a comment in the chat. Say hello. I will do my very, very best to give you a bit of a shout out. And if you have any questions, what I will do is I will go back through them all afterwards. Now, if you're watching on catch up, you might be watching on the SAA's Facebook page. You might be watching this via YouTube or via my blog. No matter how you are watching and where you are watching from, you are extraordinarily welcome. Now, let me just have a quick look at the comments and see who is in the room. Margot, good morning. Margot, you get the award for first comment of the day. Well done you. Martina, good morning. Pam, Jane, Fran, Joe, Peter, Hilary, Anne and Dee. Good morning to all of you. Please don't be afraid. You can see some usual Technique Tuesday followers are in the room, and you can see what we're doing. We have this chat all the time, and it's just lovely for you to join me. Thank you very much. Who else have we got just popped up? Julie, good morning. And Lynn, good morning too. Everyone being very jovial this morning. Thank you very much for your participation. Now, let me do a bit of a recap of the things that I've already been chatting about on social media, and then we'll get to what it is that we're going to talk about today. Let me just do a quick good morning because I've seen some more come in. Linda, good morning. Angie, Tara is in the room. Tara is the person who's been backing me up throughout all of these broadcasts. So a huge thank you to you, Tara. Thank you very much. And Jill, good morning, Jill. So already we've talked a little bit about what it's like to put on an event like this. Normally in Dorset Art Weeks, of course, we would, there's about 250, 300 of us artists down here in Dorset. We throw open the doors of our studios. I'm pointing over there because that's where the door of my studio is. We throw the doors open and we invite the general public in to talk about all sorts of things, to look at the latest collection of work, to talk about classes, or to have a look around the studio, see what facilities we offer. But of course, we are living in rather peculiar times at the moment. We have absolutely no idea if we're going to get people through the door, if people are going to feel safe enough to come out. We've actually put the whole display, or almost a whole display of work, out in the garden in a marquee so that people feel really, really safe, but not everyone has that facility. So we're not entirely sure of who we're going to get through the door. It opens on Saturday the 22nd. I am open between 10 and 4. So what I thought I would do is that I would start broadcasting lots of things online, sharing the collection, sharing some techniques, and also giving you that kind of behind the scenes. And the SAA have been brilliant in going, yes, of course you can take over our Facebook page. What could possibly go wrong? So a huge thank you to them too. Who else have we got in the room? Jane, Jilly, Michael, good morning, Teresa, Linda, Mick. Some names that I recognise and new faces too. Thank you very much. So I've been talking about what it takes to put on an event like this. I've been talking about how you can use social media to promote your work. I've been talking about labeling and presentation. And on Sunday, you might have seen a really interesting interview that I conducted with Sue Melville, who is a fellow artist, but she was an accountant first. So she understands about costing. If you'd like to see any of those broadcasts, pop over to the SAA's community page. You'll certainly see that interview there. And if you're not sure how to get to these places or where to find them, in the text for this broadcast, if you are watching on Facebook, you will see I've put lots and lots of links to all the things. So all you've got to do is click on them. You don't need to understand the technology. Tap on those links, not now, stay with me for a little bit. Tap on those links and that will take you direct to that. If you are watching this on catch up, the links will be there. I promise I will copy and paste them from wherever you're watching. Who else have we got in the room? Joe, good morning, Joe. Thank you ever so much for tuning in. That's very kind of you. Lovely Joe Alsop, fellow SAA artist there. And oh gosh, do you pronounce that Lorraine Davidson? My apologies, I am not very good at pronouncing names. Please tell me if I have got it wrong or right. Now, alongside all of those things that I've been talking about, I thought it might be really interesting to have a discussion about picture framing. Now, I want to say something before I share any information at all. Anything that I say, any of the advice that I give or the information that I share is literally just my opinion. You'll talk to another artist, they will give you an entirely different outlook on this. And that's really important, because what you actually need to do is to cherry pick your way through everything, every bit of advice that an artist gives you, and take out the bits that are more important. So anything that I share with you today does not make me right. Doesn't make me wrong either. You just need to try these things on and see if they fit. You know what it's like. You're SAA members. You know what it's like to watch one of our broadcasts and go, ooh, that's different. Let me try that out. Who else have we got in the room? Ah, Lorraine, I got it right. Thank you very much. These names pop up and it worries me that I get somebody's name wrong. So let's take you through the way that I frame a picture, the way that I like to present my work. Hopefully that will be useful to you, and then you can decide whether it's something that you would like to do. Maybe you've not tried framing your work before, because please don't think any of the information that I'm giving out is just meant for professionals. Really not. This is something that no matter where you are on your art adventures, picture framing is certainly something that is relatively easy to get right. You've just got to put a little bit of money, a little bit of time and a little bit of effort into it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take you to the oh, Jean's in the room as well. Good morning, Jean. Good morning, Terry. My mum is in the room too. Morning, Mum. I didn't think you were going to be able to tune in, my lovely. That's a very nice surprise. Thank you very much. It's nothing like having your mum in the room, is there? Let me take you to the overhead camera and I'll show you all sorts of things that I use. I'll take you through a piece of work and, like I said, hopefully it will be useful to you. So this is the first thing that lots of people are saying good morning to my mum. Fantastic. This is something that I just wanted to show you quickly. This is the SAA's catalogue, and I was having a look through this morning because they've got some rather lovely framing accessories there. And if you've got this catalogue or you want to pop over to the website, have a look through, see what you can find. The great thing about the SAA is that they always try to cater for all pockets. So you've got pre-made frames, you've got mount board if you decide you want to do it yourself, all manner of accessories. Go on the website too, because there's some interesting little bits and pieces of accessories on there. So have a good look through. Don't make any sudden rash decisions. Morning, Sandy. Thank you, Teresa. Don't make any sudden rash decisions about what you want to purchase and the quantities. Have a look through all of your options, and then you will be able to shop when you've got a picture that you need to frame. So let me just introduce you to the two ways that I particularly like to present my work. So the first one is like this. So this is a painting that is going into Dorset Art Weeks. This is a semi-abstract that I did called North Dorset, and this is what we call mount, back and wrap. Okay, so I'm very fortunate. I'm going to put it in right now. I'm very fortunate that my husband does all my picture framing for me, which I know not everybody out there has a partner who is willing to do that. I get that. I understand that. I'm just very lucky that in previous incarnations of my job, particularly with my mum and dad, we used to be picture framers. And so we've kind of inducted my husband into that as well. And he's really, really good at it. So the mount part of it is probably self-explanatory. We've got a picture mount all the way around here. I'll talk more about colours and presentation and all of those things in a minute. So it's got a mount on the front. I've left a little bit of a gap around it. Again, we'll talk more about that in just a second. So you've got the mount, and then I back it. Now, why do I back it? I back it because I'm going to show you another example of where it's not been done quite so nicely. So here is another painting that's going in. You can see that that's got a mount all the way around it, but this one hasn't been backed. Now this I don't think looks very nice. If you want somebody to invest in your work, and that is the term that you should be using, these are not throwaway items. This is your hard work. So this is an investment if somebody wants to purchase one of your paintings. If you want to command really realistic prices, and go back and watch that interview that I did with Sue, then I don't think that you can be presenting your work in such a way that you can see all the mechanics of it, the bit of sticky tape on the back. I don't think aesthetically that is very pleasing at all. So that's got a mount and is wrapped in cellophane. I'll talk more about that in just a second. This one has got a piece of grey board on the backing just to hide those mechanics. And what a lot of people do is they sometimes put business cards on the back or flyers that they put in between, all of those sorts of things. So that is what we would describe as being mount, backed and wrapped. MBW is the abbreviation that we use when we talk about it. Now I did want to talk about cellophane, okay? Now, I wrap these works in cellophane. I know it's not ideal. I absolutely understand that it's not ideal. If you can find me an alternative that works to cellophane, I will gladly use it. Potato starch doesn't work because it's only got to get slightly wet and then it will start sticking to the mounts, and then you're in a whole world of trouble, particularly of course as my work is going outside in a marquee, so I can't use potato starch. Glassine is another option, but glassine is translucent and not transparent, so people cannot see the work, and you can't, unfortunately, leave it without the cellophane on it because people want to pick it up, they want to handle it, and this cellophane, I understand, is a single-use plastic. I get that it is a problem, but the situation that we're in at the moment is not about replacing everything, it's about reducing the amount that we use. So I've taken the decision this time to not put my greetings cards in cellophane bags, to not put my digital prints in cellophane bags, so I've reduced the amount that I use. This is something that I just cannot find an alternative to, but what I would say, and I will say to people that purchase work, is reuse it, recycle it, don't just chuck it away. So I think that's an important point to make. So this is mount, backed and wrapped. And then of course you have got, sorry, I'm fishing just down to my right. You have got framed. Now, this is a painting that I actually did as a demonstration for the SAA. In fact, if you received, in terribly serendipitous timing, if you received an email from the SAA as part of your membership this morning, you will see a lovely link to this tutorial, which I called Reservoir Ducts. Now, this is framing. I have to say, I have to give Bees absolute credit for this because his framing is exquisite. So this is mounted, obviously, and mounted very well. And then I have 2 or 3 frames that I choose between as I'm doing it. This one is oak, and it is a sustainable oak as well. This is what we would call float glass. So it's not museum glass. It doesn't reflect the UV. But museum glass is really, really expensive. So I use float glass. You should always treat watercolour paintings with a bit of care anyway. And if I just flip it over to the back, I want to talk a little bit about the back of my picture frames too, because just like the back of your mounted backed and wrapped work, I think this is just as important to be neat and tidy. You want somebody investing in your work to get it home and be able to hang it straight on the wall. You don't want them to be messing about with it. You certainly, I don't think it encourages people to buy your work if the back looks untidy. When I have curated exhibitions in a past life, I have sent work back that looks neat and tidy on the front but looks horrific on the back. I haven't made myself a lot of friends doing that, but it does maintain a standard. So we've got an MDF backing in here. It's taped on the back as well to keep as much of the environment out as possible. You see that it's pinned to, and it's nice and neat and tidy. Sometimes I do put, particularly if I'm in an open exhibition, I always do put a business card or something similar on the back so that people have a way of getting hold of me if they want to know more about the work. But of course it's Dorset Art Weeks. I am sitting in front of my work, so you'd think they would know who they were buying from. My mum is just complimenting her son-in-law on the quality of his framing, which is a very big compliment considering mum and dad used to do it, and now Bees does it. And Teresa, you're right, it is confusing about the different types of glass. Rabina is asking the question, is that the same as non-reflective glass that framers usually use? No, Rabina. So you get non-reflective glass, which has that slight sort of matte quality to it. And then you get museum glass. And the difference is non-reflective glass doesn't reflect the light. You can see there's little bits of the lights that I've got in the studio here that are glinting off the surface. Non-reflective, that wouldn't happen, but the problem with non-reflective glass is that you would lose a little bit of the colour, and you would also lose a little bit of the detail. So I don't particularly enjoy using non-reflective glass. I only use that if I absolutely have to. Good morning, Anita. Anita Pounder is in the room. We've got the whole SAA team here this morning. Aren't we lucky? Thank you very much for tuning in. Museum glass is different from non-reflective glass because museum glass and float glass, when you look at them, they look absolutely identical. And actually, if we ever get up to SAA HQ again, you will see that actually it's they've got a fantastic display of the difference between the different glasses. Museum glass is crystal clear, but reflects the UV. So if I knew that a piece of work was going to hang in a place where it was going to get bombarded with sunlight, then it would be museum glass that I would use. It's also worth mentioning when we look at this work, I do make it so that my work is able to be taken out and put back together, because the client that I sell it to might not like this frame. They might want museum glass. They might want to change the colour of the mount. So we tend to frame the pictures in such a way that it can be interchangeable. Okay, so I hope that gives you a bit of an overview. Let's take you through the process of picture framing, or the process of picture framing as we do it. Yes, Helen, you're absolutely correct. Helen has put, I hear non-reflective glass can mean you can't see the artwork from certain angles. You are absolutely right, Helen, and that is why I don't particularly like to use it. Okay, let's get on to a bit of a mock-up of picture framing as to the kind of process that I would go through and the things that I might use. So here's a painting that I did for a demonstration recently. Haven't quite decided whether it's going to end up being framed or not. I haven't actually quite decided whether it's finished or not, but it was a recent piece of work that I don't think many of you have seen. So therefore I thought it would be nice to share. Excuse me, I'm going to cough. Now, first thing to think about is how you're going to present this. Two ways of presenting it. You can use a picture mount over the top. I've got lots of little samples of things here. You could put a mount over the top of it. You could also do something called float mounting, which is where this gets stuck to a piece of card first, And then you leave a little bit of a gap between the painting and the mount itself. When I take you through some of the work later in the week, you will see some of that float mounting in evidence. Not going to show it to you now, there's a bit of a teaser for you. This one, I have a feeling, is something that I would crop with, because I'm not entirely sure that I got it in the middle. It is a bit sort of sketchy, but I'm not entirely sure that I like it as it is. So I have a feeling that I would put a mount over the top of it like that. We'll come to colour in a minute. The first thing I would do, I have these mount samples. So this was a dodgy picture mount that got grubby. And thank you very much for all the kind comments about the painting. And I tend to keep them because they make really great guides for when you decide where it is you want to crop the picture. What do I mean by that? I mean that I can move this around on my surface. I can go, ooh, do I like it there? Do I want more of that music manuscript showing? Do I want less of the music manuscript showing? So I can play about with the composition of cropping my image. So we can do that, and we can really, really mess about with that. I tend to spend quite a long time faffing about with that. When I've decided where it is I would like it to go, this is kind of usually where my bit of the process ends and Bees takes over. Bees, incidentally, is my husband. That's my husband's name, just in case you weren't aware of that. His name's Richard, but no one calls him that. So when we've got it to this point, what I then do is I take a pencil and I mark in the corners where I would like him to crop it. Okay, and then I wash my hands of it, because I'm a high maintenance artist and that's what I pay him for. So I crop it, and then what we tend to do is we have a discussion about mount colour. Now this is really, really personal, and I've got some examples of mount colours here. There are loads of mount colours that you can buy, and there's really two schools of thought on this. You can pick a colour to absolutely suit the painting and nothing else. You can treat each one as an individual. This is what we would do if we were picture framing for somebody, in that we would very specifically go through the colour charts. We would ask them what kind of colour wall it's hanging on, what their furnishings were like, all of those kind of things. So it might be that I picked this really beautiful twilight blue for it. It might be that I go really super dramatic and I go for a black on it. You can see that the colours have a really great effect on the piece of work. Or you can do what I do. Now this is what I do with my work. Again, just my opinion. I tend to mount almost everything in antique white. Why do I do that? I do it because my work is going to hang as a collection. So when all the paintings are up on all the screens, walls, or wherever it is that we're displaying them, I tend to go for antique white because that is a colour that matches. We can get an entire collection of work to all look the same so that people are looking at the paintings and not at what's surrounding them. It's also because antique white, in my opinion, suits pretty much anybody's interior. Okay, that can hang in a modern house, in a very old house, you know, no matter what your furnishings are, chrome, steel, glass, oak, mahogany, whatever it is, thatched cottage, high-rise flat, that colour is something that people can envisage on the walls. Good morning, everybody who's just joined us. You're just tuning in to Ali Board. We're just having a quick chat about framing. Thank you very much for tuning in. So that is why I choose that colour. It means that people can kind of see in their head what that painting is going to look like in their own surroundings. So that is why I go for antique white. So Bees and I will have had a discussion about the mount frame. I don't put antique white on everything. So for example, there's a selection of work in Dorset Art Weeks that was either painted on black or is a very, very dark subject. So I've gone for black mounts in that case. But there are always the odd exceptions, but I would say 95% of what I frame, I choose antique white. And then you've got a choice of picture frame. And again, this is a very personal choice. It depends on what it is you're trying to say about your painting. Depends on, again, the aesthetics of it. 99 times out of 100, I go for an oak, and there are various versions of the oak that I go for. This is quite a narrow one. This is a 20mm oak. I have sometimes have a 30mm oak, or I sometimes go for a cherry wood as well, all of which tend to be quite warm, all of which are relatively contemporary in the sense that, again, that kind of oak, that pale wood, fits in with almost any surroundings. Now, what is interesting is that this is also determined by geographical area, because I have noticed when previously I've been down in Devon and Cornwall, they tend to choose a lot of white frames. I think it's that whole sort of seaside kind of atmosphere, the limed wood, the washed out kind of white look. Here in Dorset, I don't know why, but here in Dorset we prefer something warmer. So that is why we go for that. Now, there's also a discussion to be had about the width of your mount. And again, that's a bit of an aesthetic, but my piece of advice is don't be mean. Don't suddenly skimp, because framing is sometimes worked out by the square inch. Don't skimp on the width of your mount. Why? Because you don't want it to look like, if you're investing money, time and effort into framing your work, you don't want it to look like you bought a really, really cheap frame and shoved it in and you're hoping that that's fine. And that's what it will look like if your mount is too narrow. Give it plenty of space to occupy. Let's show you Reservoir Ducts again, and you can see exactly what I mean. With the parameters that we've got here, you can see I've got a lovely wide antique white mount, and that frame is far enough away from it to finish it, but you're looking at the ducts. Can you imagine what would happen? Let me just grab that little sample. If I had been really mean on the width of the mount and I'd pulled that in there, has a very different look to it, doesn't it? You're kind of looking at the frame and not at the painting. So you want a little bit of distance between the two. So that's why I do that. So when I've decided on my mount colour and I've decided on my frame choice, then I literally pass it over to Bees and he performs some sort of miracle with it. So the first thing he would do is he would mount it. Now we have a big industrial mount cutter. Excuse me, I'm going to have to just grab a quick sip of water. That is water, I promise. We have a great big industrial mount cutter, but again, I was looking through the SAA's catalogue. They've got a variety of mount cutters, or of course you can purchase from them pre-cut mounts, which tend to come like this. Now obviously this is too big for this picture, but you can have a look through their catalogue and you can see one that might work, or you can buy pre-cut mounts in advance and then you could paint your picture to fit. Okay, so that is also an option. You don't necessarily have to have mount cutting skills. Who else has just popped up? Good morning, Sue. What's Helen putting? Helen is saying, absolutely agree about the mount width. Although I made a mistake once, I made it way too wide and it ruined the whole layout. Helen, that's really interesting. Yes, you can do that. You can make it enormous and suddenly it looks kind of like an island, doesn't it? Anne is asking, what mount colour and frame would you choose for paintings on black paper? So there's a couple of black ones in the exhibition, Anne, which I will be showing you later in the week. And one of those is the sunflower that I did for an SAA demonstration. That's on black pastel matte paper. And I have gone for this combination. I have gone for a black mount with a black frame. It's quite dramatic, shall we say, but actually what you do then is you focus on the highlights rather than the shadows. It's kind of quite a statement, I think is the term that we would use. Ali WT, good morning. Lynn, SAA shop is like a child in a sweetie shop. Yes, I couldn't agree with you more, Lynn. So in terms of mount, either get a really decent mount cutter or put it in the hands of a professional, get them to cut you a mount, or buy one ready-made. It's not hard. I mean, the definition of hard is something else, isn't it? It's not hard to do. It is time-consuming to do. You do need maths. So my advice is usually put it in the hands of a professional. Now, Hillary's just said something. Many people source frames from charity shops and repurpose. You can usually tell when you view an exhibition. Hillary, yes, you're absolutely right. Anne is saying, an interesting take on just choosing antique white. I've spent ages agonising over colours. Yeah, and I mean, like I said, please take all of this with a massive pinch of salt, because this is only my opinion. Okay, so we've got our painting, we've cropped it, we've played about with the composition of it, we've chosen our mount colour, we have looked at the distance, we've chosen our frame, handed it over to the picture framer in my case, because I don't have any patience, and Bees has cut the mount for me. So what we then have is our piece ready to go in terms of picture framing. Now, what I wanted to show you was the kit that we use for picture framing. I'm not showing off. All I'm saying to you is one thing to think about when you give it to a picture. Let's just talk to you again. When you hand it over to a picture framer, I know that sometimes there is the perception that picture framing is really, really expensive. Okay, it's a tricky one to kind of get your head around, but think of it this way. If you pass it over to a picture framer, you're paying for their expertise, you're paying for their time, as you've probably already gathered. Picture framing does take a long time to do. One painting is going to take you 2 or 3 hours to sort out, okay, so that sort of puts it into context. But also you're paying for the equipment. Now, this is the equipment that we have in the studio, and I'll introduce you to the two pieces because it's interesting, I think, to see about how frames are constructed. So this is the first thing. This is our Morso cutter. This is the thing that cuts the lengths of picture framing. As you can see, we have to be really careful when people are in the studio. Look at that blade. That is a behemoth blade, and it cuts the moulding, so that's the wooden strips, at 45 degrees. It kind of does it all for you. It's foot operated. As you can see, it's a rather antique piece of equipment, but there is no better piece of equipment. Lots of people have tried to come up with all sorts of things as an alternative, and we've really not ever kind of got away from that. So that's our Morso cutter. And then this is the other bit of kit that we use. This is our underpinner. And I'll talk more about that in a second. This is the bit that kind of fires pins into the back and holds the picture frame together. Now, my mum has just put a hilarious emoji on there, and she's put Morso because that Morso cutter has had several owners in its life. They hold their value incredibly. They're not cheap bits of equipment to buy. And Mum and Dad used to own that Morso when we had our gallery, and now it's come to us, which is rather nice. Now, there's just a couple of questions just before I go on that I want to address. We've still got time. Anne is saying, do you ever use double mounting? Yes, I do sometimes, yeah. I also use something called gutter mounting if it's a pastel, so that there's a bit of space for the pastel residue to fall off as well. Another demonstration for another day. Jilly is saying, some people want a painting to fit in a certain space, so I always have smaller ones with a smaller mount. Yes, absolutely. This is the thing. This is why framing is so hard to talk about, because it is to do with an aesthetic. So not only have you got to consider your budget, you've got to consider maybe it's going in your home, maybe it's going in a friend's home, but my overriding piece of advice is always really invest some time and effort and a little bit of money if you can into it, because you don't want to downgrade your pictures. You spend all of that time and all of your love and all of your hard-earned techniques go into that picture. Don't just slam it into a frame and hope that it works. You are underselling yourself. Anne is saying, you can't beat good professional picture framing. We have a local artist who does a fantastic job, just have to wait weeks for it. Yeah, we are all a bit busy at the moment. Right, let's take you back to the overhead camera, and I will show you how Bees assembles the moulding. So this is, you remember that Morso cutter? So you've got a length of picture moulding that comes in like that. Actually, it would be that way round. Let me get it the right way round. So you have this bit here, which is called the rebate. So if you look at it from the back, you've got it slightly narrower, and then it drops down, and that's where your glass and painting and backing and all of those things are going to go. That's called the rebate of the frame. So it goes rebate facing forwards. You've got to imagine lengths of picture moulding vary an awful lot. Some of them can be anything up to 10 feet in length. You probably saw from the start graphic, and let's just show you that really, really quickly. That is what our lengths of moulding look like in the studio. So it gets loaded into the Morso cutter. That enormous blade comes down and you have to nibble away at it. You can't do it in one hit, otherwise it will fracture. So you have to nibble your way through it to cut that 45-degree bevel. And then you end up, hopefully, if you've done your maths correctly, with your 4 sides of whatever it is that you're framing. And then they have to be pushed together. Now, there's lots of schools of thought about how you pin them together. SAA have a really interesting piece of equipment called, I think it's called a Pushmaster. Correct me if I'm wrong, but there's a piece of kit where you can push pins into the back of it, because you've got to hold those corners together somehow. The way that we do it, sometimes, depends on the wood, depends on how porous it is. Sometimes we will PVA glue them first. Sometimes we will use a fast setting epoxy resin to glue them together, and then they tend to get held together. Now let me get this the right way around. They tend to get held together in framing clamps like this to dry. Now this is one of the parts that can drive you insane, because they can fall apart really easily, they can rock. This isn't the best clamp. This is a clamp that we don't actually use anymore. We use strap clamps. And what we do is that goes together, and then that dries overnight. So again, this is not something that you can sort of throw a picture frame together in an afternoon. This is something that needs time for things to dry and glue and all of those kind of things. Ian, thank you very much for your question. I'll get to that at the end if you don't mind. I'll come back to that one. So when that's dried and glued together, you have to check that there are no gaps in it. That's why this one is on the scrap heap. You can probably see there's some old glue on there, because when it had dried and gone together, it didn't make a nice tight fit. And you've got to make sure that there aren't any gaps or any ridges, or it's off center, any of those kind of things. When you're happy with that, it then goes into that underpinner. Let's show you that. So you can see that kind of V shape at the back. It slots in, and then from underneath you slot it in like that. From underneath comes a pin, again foot operated, which you can push into the back. But you can get machines, little handheld machines, where you push the pin in from the other side. What do I mean by the pin? You can probably see one just here. You've got a V-shaped pin. These things are lethal. I have cut my finger on too many of these. And so not only is it glued together, but it is also pinned at the back. And the wider frames need 2 or 3 pins. So you can see, look how lovely and smooth that is. A bevel there that you can hardly notice. That's what you're after. And if I show you the corners of all of these, they're so difficult to do. Black is particularly tricky to get it to meet. And then you have really dodgy, I've got 2 pieces of work in the exhibition framed in this silver. And I think B's probably spent more time over these 2 than he did probably 10 of the others, because to get this silver to meet, to not chip, to not flake, to come together really quite neat and tidily is what the professionals do. They don't just, it's not an easy thing. You can't just sort of hammer it together and then it's all fine and dandy. So you've got your frame. You can make a decision to get glass cut for you, or you can cut it yourself. Here's an example of a glass cutter. Usually the source of much swearing, one of these, because you do need to score a line and then snap the glass. I wasn't going to demonstrate that for you today because I'd probably cut myself live on social media. We tend to do 2 things. Some bits of glass we get cut. If they're particularly large paintings, again, we put it in the hands of a professional. We take it to a glazier and they cut the glass for us. But as smaller ones, kind of 20 by 16 and below, we cut in-house. So you've got your picture frame, your glass, your painting, which is hopefully stuck to a mount. And again, much contention about how you stick a picture to a mount. This is the way that we do it, but this is not the necessarily archival version of doing it. So this is the SAA's self-adhesive framing tape. That is not archival in the sense that you couldn't leave that in a frame for 100 years and still expect it to stick. What you should do is something called hinge mounting, but again, that's another demonstration for another day. For the most part, we use this tape to stick our paintings to the back of the mount. And then what you have to do is create this sandwich. Excuse me. So you've got your frame, and then you need to put your glass in. Your glass needs to be beyond clean, and that will take you a good half an hour to get it clean, because static will draw all sorts of dog hair, chicken feathers, all of those kind of things to it. And so you spend your life picking little bits of nonsense off of the glass. Glass goes in, then the picture mount, which has got your picture on the back. And then let's go back to Reservoir Ducts so that you can see the back of this piece. So in there you've got the glass, the picture, and the mount, and then you need a backing board of some description. Now we use MDF. Again, not overly archival. There are other things that you can use. You can use what's it called? I can't think what the other board is called, but not chipboard. A marine ply. That's the board I couldn't think of. I wouldn't use chipboard because it looks rubbish on the back. It doesn't give this kind of nice smooth finish to it. Don't scrimp on this. And then again, there's lots of ways that you can hang it, and this is one of the things I wanted to talk about today. Again, you'll get different galleries or different exhibitions or different artists doing this in a different way. I'm just going to tell you about the way that we do it. Okay, now I like to use D-rings. I like to use D-rings because it means that the painting sits flush to the wall. Now, what has happened in the past is that people use screw eyes. So those kind of little like kapuki kind of things that have a little screw on the end of them, and you screw them into the wooden frame, because the argument is that it tips the frame off the wall ever so slightly. But that is a way of framing from an old method. That is when pictures used to be hung from picture rails. So very, very high up in a room with very high ceilings. So they needed to be tipped forward so that you could see them. We don't have that anymore. We have lower ceilings in most contemporary houses, certainly in really old houses such as thatched cottages. So you don't need the screw eyes. Also, screw eyes mark your wall. If you've got wallpaper, they dig holes in it. You're not going to be best pleased if you want to change your picture. So I use D-rings, which are riveted into the backing board. Okay, you could screw them into the frame, but again, that's going to mark. Sometimes you have no choice, and particularly if your sandwich of stuff that's going in is too thick, you have to screw it from the frame. That's just something that you have to get over. So for the most part, I like them to be riveted into the backing board. We drill a hole in the backing board. We use crimp rivets or sometimes bifurcated rivets through, but you can see that's nice and flush there. We do, I can never remember, I think it's 1/3 down and 1/4 of the way in. See, I've forgotten already. Yeah, 1/4 down, no, 1/3 down, 1/4 in. That's the measurement that we take. And then we use picture cord. Now, why do we use picture cord? Because picture cord is dramatically stronger than picture wire. Picture wire stretches. Picture wire can unravel really quite quickly, and it has a lower hanging strength than picture cord. So this is the stuff that we use. Brilliant stuff. Really got a high tensile strength. So your picture isn't going to throw itself off the wall. And we do 2 series of knots because this is a fail-safe. So we do a reef knot to get it together. We don't hang one piece of cord and then just tie it here. That way madness lies. Double it up. Again, don't be tight with it. Put it into a knot and then put it into a second knot, so that if this one fails, you've got another one, and then they can be hung like that. Okay. I know that's a lot of do's and don'ts, isn't there? But you can watch this back. You can go, oh, what was she talking about? When you've got a painting that you've invested so much time, effort and love in, you don't want it to be throwing itself off the wall, do you? So we've got that on the back. Oh, Helen's just asked a question. Do the rivets on the D-rings go all the way through? If so, doesn't it something against the back of your artwork? Very good point, Helen. So what we do is, yes, the rivets do go all the way through. They're flush on the other side. That's why we use pull together rivets. And then what we do on the back is we put a little cross of tape over the back so that it doesn't mark your artwork at all. If you're ever concerned that you're doing it, I probably would be concerned about a painting like this because it's on very thin paper. So what we would also do is that we would put a piece of mount board to protect the artwork before the backing board goes in. So you've got all of that done. So you put your backing board in and then you need to get it into the frame and nice and secure. So you can bang little what's called glazier's points in with a hammer if you want to, or if you or your art club want to invest in a bit of kit, you can use one of these, which is called a Fletcher gun. And these, I'm not going to do it because again it's lethal. They fire out of the front here and you push it up against the frame, pull it like a staple gun, and it fires flexi pins. You can get ones that fire rigid pins and you can fire flexible pins. I like the flexible pins because then if I decide that I don't want this picture to be in this frame anymore and I'm going to take it out and put another one in, I can just fold the pins back. Okay, and then it all goes in and then your framer's tape goes on the back. Again, not the best way of doing it. What you really should use is butterfly tape, is the gummed tape, which you wet and then you put onto the back. But I use the SAA's tape because as long as you don't hang your picture somewhere really hot, like over a radiator or on a chimney breast, any of those kind of things, then this will be absolutely fine and dandy. It also means that if for some reason their client doesn't like the frame or they want a different colour mount or any of those kind of things, I can strip this off really easily with a heat gun, whereas butterfly tape you have to take off, you have to sand it back, and then you probably have to put a new backing board in as well, and it all gets a little bit dull when you're doing it several times over. And I say we like it's me that's doing it, but it's really not. And then when you've got it all together, then you have to get it all back to the front again. You're probably going to have to give it a last clean of glass, but you're also probably going to have to clean them all when they're hung anyway, because this is such a dust magnet, something like this. Also, you can see the way I'm handling it, sticking my great big thumbs in it and all the rest of it. So we will go back over them. But that is how a picture is framed. Now, the lovely Mick has already written a poem today. Let's just take you back to my face on camera. What's Mick said? So Ali's here with the SAA. So looking forward to an interesting day. Again, something new that's coming our way and a chance to buy new products with which we can play. Mick, you are a gentleman. Thank you very much. Now, there was a question before I forget. Who asked the question? Ian did. How do you feel about encapsulating art in a resin block for gallery art? Yes, I have done that myself, Ian. Resin blocks can be tricky little monsters to get in as well. It's really interesting to encapsulate something like a papyrus or something where the actual surface that the artwork is painted on is making a statement in itself. All of these things are perfectly viable. Finding those resin blocks is a bit of a challenge. Like sometimes when I have to ship work abroad, we don't want to be shipping it with glass, so we have to find an acrylic substitute. That can end up being quite expensive and quite difficult to source. And acrylic, if you thought glass was tricky to cut, acrylic even more so. So hopefully that is giving you lots and lots of information, and hopefully as well gives you a bit of an extra appreciation for if you do take your work to a picture framer, you're probably now thinking, wow, actually I thought it was quite expensive. Turns out it's actually quite reasonable for the amount of materials and time and process that goes into that. Now I'm just going to very quickly look at my cheat sheet because there's things that I've got to say to you. Yes, all sorts of things that are coming up. I was just reminding myself of what they are. If you have any questions, oh, Helen's just popped a quick question. How many times do you put your artwork into a frame only to find a bit of fluff under the glass every time? For me, Helen, if I had £1 for every time that picture went into that frame and there was a moment when you turn it over and you realise that there's something in there, I'd be a very, very rich woman. Again, another reason to put it in the hands of a professional framer so that you don't have that problem. I'm glad that, I'm really glad everyone's sort of saying that it's really opened their eyes. Yes, thank you. Because I suppose it's because we are picture framers and we offer it as a service here that we're quite passionate about the amount of skill that is involved in doing that sort of thing. So if you don't want to go through all that hassle, then put it in the hands of a professional. They will take all the strain for you. But of course, if you don't have that budget, it's absolutely completely easy to do. It's just a little bit of your time and a few resources. D is saying acrylic on a laser cutter is fab and precise. D, you and I need to have a chat about that. Jilly is saying thank you. Good. Right, lots of things coming up. So you are all, every single one of you, invited to the private view of Dorset Art Weeks on Friday. How on earth are we doing that when you're all living all over the place? I tell you how we're going to do it. This is how we're going to do it. I am going to be streaming the private view on Facebook, both on this page and over on my own social media page too. You can join me at 5 o'clock UK time on Friday the 21st of May, when we will be taking you around the exhibition. It will be kind of on the fly type of broadcast. It won't be the slickest thing that's going out just because we've got to use mobile cameras. My husband's going to be behind the camera for that, and I will have a very special guest in the studio with me, my mum, because we have done a lot of collaborative work together. If you would like to read more about my Dorset Art Week adventures, then pop over to the SAA's Community News and Articles page, or you can check out my blog, or you can check out my website. All of the links for those things are up in this broadcast, and don't worry, you can watch it on catch up. Don't worry if you've missed anything, you can go back through the blog posts and you can read all about costing your work using social media, and there's lots of broadcasts to come. I've done 2 hilarious broadcasts, vlogs, so that's video blogs, coming up about what it's like to set up a marquee in the rain. Lots of things still to come. I do hope that you join me for that. Thank you ever so much to everybody who has tuned in to watch me live this morning. Thank you if you're watching on catch up. A huge thank you to the SAA team for allowing me to take over their Facebook page, which was very brave of them, wasn't it? If you have any questions, then please don't hesitate to get in touch with me via Messenger or email or via the website. I will be only too pleased to answer everything. In the meantime, take lots and lots of care of yourself. I will be back on Friday for the private view, and I will be here again next Tuesday for next week's Technique Tuesday. Want to know what I'm going to be talking about next week? Do you know what? You're going to have to go over to the website and find out. You take lots of care of yourselves, and I will hopefully see you on Friday.